Welcome to another episode of Dolphins In Depth, a podcast provided to you by the Miami Herald. I am your host, Omar Kelly, Miami Herald columnist, and joining me is Isaiah Smalls, or as somebody on Twitter said I should call you, Izzy Smalls.
Yeah, Izzy.
How you feel about that one? I'm always a nickname person.
Izzy isn't bad. Izzy isn't bad. I'm not mad at that.
It's Izzy Smalls, not just Izzy.
I get it. But I feel like nicknames are supposed to be shorter than like your actual name. So Izzy Smalls it just sounds way too long. So I mean, I'll leave that up to you. Whatever you feel comfortable.
It can't be forced. It's got to come natural to us.
That's what I'm saying.
Listen, today I was going through the motions at Dolphins practice. I've lost my feeling. I've lost my zest and yearn for focus. I wonder and suspect that maybe the Dolphins have lost their yearn and focus just because what are they playing for, Isaiah?
A winning record, apparently. That is very important to some of the players. Tua mentioned that today. Not just him, but the players in the locker room. They obviously want to finish strong, right? And Cater Co talked about a little bit about that on Monday. Like, you don't want to go out there and put bad tape out there, right? So, look, and at the end of the day, you have an opponent that is coming into your house, right? That is kind of very, very similar position as I'm going to write, later this week. But at the end of the day, like it's still a very sport, right? Tough guy sport. So you don't want to be looking like the weakest of all the tough guys, right? So
you don't want to seem like you're going through the motions. But
exactly.
I will tell you this: give you a little bit of Dolphins history.
Okay,
I believe it was the 2000. Let me look it up just to make sure. It was the 2018 season.
Okay.
The Miami Dolphins went up to Minnesota on December the 16th. It was a game that they had to have to stay in the playoff hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what the Adam Gase team did? They laid a 41-17 goose egg. They got dominated by Minnesota. And then the head coach and possibly the coaching staff blamed the players. They just laid it all out on the players. And you know what subsequently happened the very next week? They got beat 17-7 by Jacksonville. And then the next week when they went to Buffalo at home, then the next week when they went to Buffalo, they quit on their coach. And 42-17 in Buffalo, it was a Josh Allen spanking. I believe, they beat Buffalo earlier that year. 21-17. I'm not sure if Josh Allen played in that game because Josh Allen hasn't lost to Miami but once. But after that game, we went into the locker room, and that was kind of a situation where we are like right now. This was the beginning of the Chris Grier in full power, as he's always been GM since 2019 when they snaked Dennis Hickey. Mike Tannenbaum took his job. They shanked Dennis Hickey, got him in the side like it was prison stab job, and then they put up Chris Grier as the GM. But Chris Grier never got power until 2019, which is when he hired Brian Flores. But in that locker room after the game, we went to a player and to a man. Do you want this coaching staff back? Do you want things to stay? Do you feel like you believe in this organization? To a man, everybody said, I don't know. I don't make those decisions. And do you feel confident that Adam Gase could turn it around? I don't know. Hey, I'm not paid to make those decisions. To a man. And we got the message.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm very curious to see. I think everybody is not naive enough to understand that a losing record would pretty much ensure total change. I think if the Dolphins come out and they lose 2 of their next 3 and produce a losing record, then Steve Ross probably is going to have his hand forced on him. Now, a winning record, getting to 9, being the 5th straight season that this organization has produced a winning record. Not a playoff win, with a winning record. It would be the first time since 1997 to 2003, a 7-year stretch where they had a winning record. And that was under Jimmy Johnson and Dave Wanstead. Obviously, it went left because they didn't really have the quarterback, and Ricky Williams wanted to smoke weed instead of play football. And, things went left on Wanstead. It would help if he was actually a better executive and made better draft picks. But, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But if you tell this team, hey, if you don't go out and you don't produce a winning record, more than likely your head coach is going to change. Do you think that would motivate them?
I think so. I think, these guys really, really like Mike McDaniel. I think Mike McDaniel is well loved throughout the organization. So I definitely see these players wanting to play hard to save, McDaniel's job. But I honestly, I don't even think a losing record would result in McDaniel getting losing his job, honestly, just because of, I think it would be easy within the organization to lay blame on the fact that, your starting quarterback missed 4 games, during the easy part of your schedule. Right. So, if even what they were 1-3 over that stretch, right. Even if they were, with Tua probably in the lineup, they probably go 3-1, maybe, if not. And maybe. That changes everything. And obviously that changes everything, right? So I think
it does not change everything, because it probably wouldn't change their ability to beat good teams.
Yes, you're right. But at the very least, they could hang their hat on, like, look, we're a playoff team if Tua doesn't miss those 4 games, right? And so I think at the end of the day, like, you're searching for culpability, right? Like who's at fault for this disastrous season, right? And kind of similar to like what's happening in San Francisco, right? Like they've had a bunch of injuries now and they're depleted. And I saw some reports that, Kyle Shanahan might be fired, which to me is a little bit surprising. But, exactly, right? Exactly. But, I think at the end of the day,
team to the Super Bowl for 2 straight years, got a ton of injuries. It doesn't make any sense. And this is what I don't understand about fan bases. And I'll let you get back to your point.
Yeah.
But they always think that resetting it is going to make it all better. Yeah. When you're resetting it, there's going to be a ton of collateral loss because you reset it. There's going to be a ton of adjustment period because you reset it. And then you got a 3-year period where it's like, okay, we got to figure each other out. We got to get comfortable. And then we're probably going to do it again. Yep. Now what I will say is, the reason why you should have continuity, because it's working. And because you're growing together and you're creating a synergy. My only question about what's going on here is it working? Are they creating a synergy? And I don't know the answers to that. So,
I mean, no, I agree with you. I think continuity is good for organizations like this and franchises. Like if you look at a team, and it's throughout sports too. You look at like the Spurs with like Greg Popovich, right? Even though, that team is still building, right? Like, they've had continuity. They have the people in place. Look at Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, right? Like, again, like
and Omar Khan. He's been that GM he's been the number 2 in the GM, took over a position. Yes, the Baltimore, exactly. Seattle had continuity before they got rid of Pete Carroll. Yeah.
Kansas City, like there's like it's good organizations don't make these, flash in the pan changes, right? These quick changes just because it didn't go out, right? Didn't go out right. So I think it would be worth, obviously there's holes on this team, right? Like they need better offensive line play, right? They need better, at least better bodies on the defensive line. Obviously Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell are a hell of a duo, but they need more players outside of that. They need the help on the edge rusher, right? So a healthy edge rushing unit, right, would help too. So obviously the safeties haven't been as good as advertised. So like you can go down the list and point to like these, these roster decisions that, were made and you're like,
notice you said the word roster decisions.
And look, that's for you to say. Like you are the columnist. You can say what you want on that.
You just said it. Said roster decisions. I'm just saying, you just said roster decisions.
But, I mean, look, it looked good on paper coming in, right? Like you look at this team on paper, you're like, oh, like this ain't bad. Like I could, obviously the offensive line, like at the beginning of the year, we said the offensive line and then the defensive line, like the trenches would need some work. But I think I would like to say on the defensive line, they probably overperformed your expectations, correct?
No, here's why.
Okay.
Because one, Calais Campbell was the last minute signing.
Yeah.
It's not like he was the last free agent signing. You just threw him on the pile just because you saw a training camp. You signed like 4 dudes with dollar store contracts. Yeah. It's like you went to the dollar store and you're like, oh, let me go get me some offense, some defensive linemen, and just like, picked up 4 of them. Then you got home, you put them on your team, and you realize, oh, these dudes are trash. Like, okay. Let me go get Calais Campbell. Like, he's been a saving grace. Deshaun Hand, I think he's even outperformed expectation. But your backup defensive linemen are guys off the street. Everybody that you signed, except for Deshaun Hand, gone. So you can't sit here and think that this is the answer or that you got it right. Hell, look at your safety position. Woo. And I'm not a big advocate of the guys that they let go. I just thought they were all right, but goodness gracious, you have a whole safety unit where you don't have an interception from those dudes all season.
That's rough. That's definitely difficult to justify, right? If you look at that, because I mean, Javon Holland had great couple years. Obviously he's been a little bit banged up. He's had a good couple of years. He's had a
solid couple of years.
Solid. Look, you can point to plays in the past couple of years where it's like, okay, Javon Holland was you know what I'm saying? Like, he's had some great plays. And I think in the beginning of the year this year, there was the first game, but then it's been like, then he got hurt and it's like, all right, where is that? And Poyer, has been there, the entire year, but hasn't really.
Did you just say Poyer's been there?
Yeah, I said he's been there. He's been there. Like, what my favorite response from the coaches, like, it's a little bit of non sequiturs when we ask about Jordan Poyer, and they're always like, he does things that you guys can't see, and it's like, cool, that's right, I'm sure he does, like, but also what we can see is just not the best at all.
I don't want to take a dump on Poyer just because. Of course not. It's not like they're getting roasted deep. Yeah. Even the touchdown that they just scored against Houston, where Stroud is people are criticizing him for, like, God, why couldn't he make a play? Like, he's standing in front of the defender. What is he supposed to have? Eyes behind his back and know where the defender's going?
Yeah. That looked like a communication issue between Ramsey and Poyer to me.
Yeah, they were a receiver and a quarterback were just freestyling. And that's hard to play. Yeah. It was zone coverage in the end zone. I'm not really critical of Miami's zone coverage in the end zone because it's like, especially when you have a quarterback who escapes a sack and then buys time and finds. That's what good quarterbacks do. And I think Stroud is a good quarterback. He's in a bit of a sophomore slump, but he's shown you that he's got good signs and good traits. But even the linebacker play, and I'm not just saying it on defense, because in fact, I have in the Miami Herald column that I wrote today, which I encourage you all to read. It's 5 reasons why your season is poo. And a good deal of it is, in my mind, the trench play, but primarily the offensive line. Like I contribute. People always wonder where'd the big plays go? How'd they disappear? You know why the big plays went away? Because you averaged 5.1 yards per carry last season on 300 and it wasn't like a small amount of carries. On 456 carries, you averaged 5.1 yards per carry. It's not like you were selectively just running the ball and, we got lucky this time. No, you ran the ball 456 times and averaged 5.1 yards per carry. So teams had to bring safeties down the box to stop your run game. Nobody has to respect your run game now.
No.
And if I don't respect your run game, I'm just putting 2 safeties over the top, not allowing you to get over the top of me and pressing Tyreek underneath and forcing Tua to throw what he can throw and check down the whole game. Okay, nobody fears that. If you're going to put 2 safeties high, generally you want to run to make them pay. Unfortunately, you can't run with this offensive line. And once they lost Austin Jackson, I'm glad that Mike McDaniel basically said, when we look at and assess and evaluate why our run game shut down, the coincidence is Austin Jackson It all started when Austin Jackson got hurt. It all just started going downhill from that point. I never viewed Austin Jackson as that critically important, but that's the only unilateral consistency of why they suck running the ball. I mean, you're at the point now where you're at 3.0 yards per carry for 6 weeks. Like, that's not going to cut it. That's like a yard and a half lower than what the rest of the league is averaging. It's unreal. But to me, it all starts with the trenches. And when you do dollar store shopping in your trenches and you don't put the resources to it, Jack Driscoll, who didn't even make it to your 53-man roster, is literally the only veteran addition that you made this offseason. Mm-hmm. And, I can't even name you the defensive linemen because you cut them all, except for Benito Jones and Deshaun Hand. You cut them all when training camp concluded. And now when you start to see little injuries and you start to see people's body wearing down, you're susceptible to the run. You're not getting any pressure on quarterbacks. People wonder, why don't you have any turnovers? Well, because quarterbacks aren't really being rushed. And then if they do get rushed, you've got a blitz. So in my mind, my opinion, I think this is just a poorly constructed team. But, we'll see. We'll see based on how they finish the season out.
That's right.
Let me ask you, Grant Dubose, let's talk about the news of the day. Kendall Lamb watched practice, did not participate. Are you worried about Lamb? And do you have any hope that Teron Armstead plays? And should Teron Armstead play?
That's a good question. I mean, I think if obviously, Teron Armstead has been banged up for weeks, right? I this is something that I, posed at the end of my receiver story that hopefully is posted now, and certainly will be by the time this podcast comes out. But like, there's a real argument to be made for resting some of the older guys, right? I think just the competitive nature of these guys, like if a Kendall Lamb is healthy enough to play, he will play, right? And I think the same thing with Teron too. Like if he's healthy enough to play, he will play. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, right? And we're in week, what this is 16, I think 16 or week 16. Like these guys are banged up, right? And so should they play? I think that's a question for the individual, right? Like I think there's arguments for both sides, right? Because on one hand, you want to preserve the body for as long as possible because football at the end of the day is a game of attrition, right? Like every single hit, every single block, every single what have you, you are physically breaking down your body. It's just a violent game. That's the reality of the situation. So, for someone like a Kendall Lamb, like I know he had thoughts, an idea of like maybe retiring at the beginning of the year. And then, once he started playing, it's like, maybe I got a little bit more in me. Maybe for him, if he's coming back next year, I mean, I think I would kind of err on the side of caution. But if he's, like I said, if he's healthy enough, then let him go. Same with Teron. If he's healthy enough, let him go. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. And then I know you mentioned Dubose with him, flying home today. Obviously, the team is very, very excited about that. And it's, it's great, right? Anytime that you see one of your brothers like go down like that, and it's a very, very scary situation, like what happened on Sunday, like you feel for him, right? The fact that they were even able to finish the game the way that they did and still have a chance to me was surprising, right? Because, for lack of better words, like I've seen teams fold over less, right? So I just, I want to definitely commend, the Dolphins for being able to finish out that game because I know their minds weren't 100% focused on the task at hand, right? You had somebody that, was in the hospital.
Yes.
So, shout out.
I think that rattles both teams because when you see, it shows you the humanity of that sport. I had never seen, I remember talking to Jonnu Smith after the game, and he talked about, and I asked about, seeing them cut off the jersey. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody had ever seen that. Like, we were worried that they were trying to resuscitate him. Like we never saw DeMar Hamlin. Yeah. We never saw really what happened in that situation. Mm-hmm. But them cutting off the jersey, that was my biggest fear, that like, are they trying to resuscitate his heart? Like what's going on here? But that just showed the humanity of that sport. But it's good that he's going to get home. They've already placed him on injured reserve, so that means his season is done. But I worry a little bit about that receiving core. No Tyreek Hill today. Obviously, he's a 30-year-old, so he probably got a 30-year-old veteran rest day. Ignore the Tyreek tweets. He acknowledged that he's out here just trolling people.
Yeah.
5.1 million engagements of Tyreek saying, what would he say?
He said the tweet blew up. Hold on, I literally just have it. Okay, I got it. Yeah. Tweet blew more than I expected. That was the first tweet. And then the second one was got y'all exactly how I want with the little devil emoji. So
yeah, the initial tweet was what? The initial tweet was what?
Hold on. It's time for me to go, coach. No commas. No commas.
Yeah. It's I love Mike McDaniel's joke, about where there was no comma there. It's time for me to go, coach.
Yeah.
Or it's time for me to go, coach. Yeah. Or maybe it's time for me to go, coach. It's as you know, based on our private text exchange, Tyreek likes attention on Wednesday. He does what he's in the training room and he's like, how can I get these people today? And I'm like, you're not getting me. You're not getting me. You'd have to tweet out, I'm retiring for me to actually care about what you're saying. It's funny. I tell this story. When I left to go work for I'm Athlete and then eventually came back and worked for all Dolphins, one of the first interviews, because I never really covered Tyreek. Mm-hmm. I did a little bit in training camp, but then not really. And then the season progressed. So I didn't know what he was like during the season. So one of the first interviews I have with him, he was basically like, yeah, man, I was just making up routes and running wrong routes. I didn't really know the offense my first year. And I'm thinking 1,700 yards, all pro season, and you're out here just making up routes. And I think that there's some level of truth to that because even now you hear him in Tua. He's like, yeah, I ran the wrong route and Tua just found me. Tyreek is just Tyreek.
Yeah.
But then I take it to my colleagues and I'm like, y'all are not alarmed by this? And they're like, man, Tyreek just be lying. And what is it that I said to you when you first got on the beat?
Tyreek just be lying. Yeah, that's exactly what you said. He's a professional, troll. I think, you got to look at his he actually took it out of his bio.
He changed it, yes.
But it was in his bio I like to start shit and leave or something like that. Start crap. I'm not sure if I can cuss on this, so I probably
you can't. Yeah.
So bleep that out. But
that was Tyreek's his Twitter profile was, I'd like to start bleep and leave. Yes. And that's what he does every Wednesday. Yeah. And I just sit there and ignore it because I know it's sad that Mike had to acknowledge it. He was like, yes, I was aware of what Tyreek tweeted. He was in good spirits during the walkthrough. I'm just glad there was no comma there.
No, that's real. That's real. I think.
Yeah, but what do you think? I don't think Jaylen Waddle plays. Mm-hmm. Suffered a knee injury, even though we haven't seen him this week. He left the game without a brace on his knee, which was encouraging. I saw Dee Eskridge today. No brace on his knee, but Mike McDaniel said he's not playing. Are you confident that this Dolphins receiving core of Tyreek Hill, Malik Washington, River Cracraft can get the job done?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, look, Malik Washington has been obviously a great find, right? His teammates love him, the coaches love him. He's tough. That's why he's in on those goal line, blocking assignments. He led the team in receiving yards last week. So obviously he's talented, right? I just don't think it's enough because just simply how teams have been playing them, right? They because no one respects the run game. I think it's even easier now to key in right on Tyreek with no Jaylen Waddle because at the very least beforehand you're running the two high safeties, right? It's still kind of pick your poison, right?
Yeah.
Obviously you're limiting the deep routes, but at the same time, you know, like you still have to, you know, one could still end up beating you a little bit. That's why there was those games where like one player would do well and the other one not so much. And so with no Jaylen Waddle, right, you can really just key in on
which is
on
what Houston
Tyreek.
did.
Yes. And so I just think like it's not gonna be good. Like, especially with, you know, that defense over there in San Francisco. Like, I mean, like they're good. Like they're getting healthier, right? I think Nick Bosa is playing. Dre Greenlaw played for the first time, and you know he was flying around. You know, obviously Fred Warner is one of the best linebackers, if not the best linebacker in the league. You know, Tre'Davious Ward out there at corner, like they have guys, right? And so look, man, you're asking me, do I think that receiving core can really match up against San Francisco's defense? I don't think so. I don't.
So they can't run the ball. Receiving core can't match up. So Tua's going to have to put the cape on. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, if there's any pieces of the cape left, I mean, the cape's kind of charred, you know, at this point, right? Like it's been, you know, with each L this season, it kind of gets a little bit more burnt up, you know. So I mean, like I guess you can put it on, but it's gonna be, you know, I'm more so looking for the defense. Like the defense played very well against the Texans, right? They were put in some bad spots situationally just by the turnovers, right? So you know, a lot of short field opportunities for them, and you know, touchdowns were scored. However, they played well. Like when, you know, push came to shove and they needed to, you know, shut down CJ Stroud in that offense, you know, they did. You know, Joe Mixon, who, you know, we made a big deal about, didn't really have the best game. I mean, he might have gotten a little bit banged up early in the game, but still, like, we were very, you know, that was one of the guys we were talking about, right? He's a very physical runner. You know, I don't even think he touched 50 yards, you know, on Sunday. So they played a good job. The defense played very well defending and limiting, the Houston Texans offense, right? And so, you know, fast forward to this week, right? You know, got another, you know, pretty good offense, right? You know, obviously no Trent Williams at I think left tackle. You know, Christian McCaffrey's out. You know, no Brandon Ayuk, but you still have Brock Purdy, who's, you know, very similar to Tua in the sense like they're both anticipation throwers, right? You know, they still got Debo, who, you know, is good. He's pretty solid, right? He's a very solid receiver. I have friends that you know, think otherwise, but you know, he's still a pretty solid receiver, to me at least. So I'm looking more so for the defense to limit, you know, the San Francisco 49ers, man, and then hopefully they can create some turnovers. Obviously, I haven't done that well, you know, all year, but like, you know, especially if Bradley Chubb plays, this is his third week of practice. You know, there's a chance he plays. You know, again, 15 snaps. You know, he's one of those game wreckers that can play those 15 snaps and, you know, make a play out of, you know, one of those 15 snaps. So I think, you know, I'm looking more so for the defense to step up and play well versus, you know, having Tua save it all, you know.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see what happens. We're going to continue to monitor what's going on with Jaylen Waddle, Tyreek, who I think he'll be back in practice, and these offensive linemen here on Dolphins in Depth. We will be back Friday for another episode, sort of wrapping up the week. On that note, we are out, and we will see you on Friday.